But the MVP, fucking phone beeps, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm dialing. I'm dialing. Get off the thing. Are you on the? And it's like.
Louis, are you on the other phone?
I love that. It was so. It's like a. You know what it's like? It's like nightmare logic. It's like, aren't you on the phone? And it's like, I thought you were on the phone with me. And it's like, what's the number? Dial it. It was great.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
Yeah.
It's one fucking hour time. I'm Evan Husney, and this is the show, of course, where we got one fucking hour to talk about one goddamn movie. And we got Tom Fitzgerald in the house. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, one fucking hello.
There we go. Hi. And, of course, to my right, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. Marcus, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? I'm feeling pretty good about tonight because it's FUCKTOBER already, right?
Oh, it's actually
in New York. It's FUCKTOBER.
It is. That's right.
In LA, it's regular old FUCKTember still. For another hour. So.
Yes, it is. But this is what we're calling one fucking Tober. Okay, this is the start of our horror movie blitz for the month of October. So. Ooh. Get it straight or pay the price. Okay, yeah, one fucking Tober. But here we go. We're going to be covering every week from starting now to the next 3 weeks. We're going to be covering horror flicks here on the show. Yeah. And we're starting off with a banger with George A. Romero's 1976, maybe released in 78. But Martin, okay, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
I hope so, because that's I'm loaded for bear on Martin.
Okay, we got all the Martin Lawrence jokes out last weekend for those who are just tuning in. So.
Yeah, we processed that already through our system.
Yeah, we did. But there's also a little other minor milestone here before we start that clock, guys. I checked this, and this week is officially the one fucking year anniversary of the show. So big congratulations. And thanks to everybody who's been tuning in over the last year. We appreciate you. Thanks so much. You're awesome. Yeah. We got many more years.
We're just glad that anybody's ever watching, and we do appreciate it, because we're not just like yelling into the void. Actually like, communicating with fellow human beings. That's cool. And I love it. We saw a 12-month cycle, man. We did it. And yeah, there's more coming. Lots of titles, lots of cray. Birthdays are coming. Again.
I already got my birthday pick. Yeah.
Another round of birthday flicks. Yeah, it's gonna be great. So, first year in the can. We went online in October 2021 on October 5th with our very first episode, Deliverance, and now here we are, October 2022. Let's kick it off. George A. Romero's Martin, episode 42, y'all. I'm gonna start that clock right now. Here we go. All right.
Okay.
Just a little bit of the usual background on this week's film. All right. Martin is George A. Romero's micro-budgeted psychological vampire film from 1976, which is the portrayal of a lonely, isolated young man and his fight with inner demons and vampiric lust. He's the type of vampire that attacks his victims gracelessly and with hypodermic needles and razor blades in order to satiate his blood-drinking compulsion, while also coming to terms with the conflicts of his family and the dark history that surrounds them. All right, Tom, so here we go. We're talking Martin here. I think we should kind of put this into the context of George Romero's films, because most people know his work is very zombie-centric, and I think this movie kind of steps outside that. So I think we should maybe start with that.
Yeah, well, indeed, this is right in the middle of the 70s, and right between the big chunky Night of the Living Dead in 1968, and then Dawn of the Dead, 1978, 1979. And, he was kind of stumbling after the surprise success of Night of the Living Dead. And he made some very strange films, like There's Always Vanilla which I'm promising myself soon that I will be watching that. In 1971. It's guys. The title is "There's Always Vanilla." Come on.
I don't know what's going on there. All
I'm
right.
saying. Okay, so that's 1971. It was a big bomb, and then he did the very interesting and more well-known "Season of the Witch."
Oh yeah.
Hungry Wives, Jack's Wife, I think is the other title.
I like
and,
that.
That bombed too, but it's very cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. And there's actually some similarities with Martin sometimes as far as like interior house horror, you know.
Totally.
But yeah, that was another flop. And then he did the Crazies, which is returning thematically very much into
Doomsday.
things in the fields. Yeah, and like things in the fields that are conspiring to kill you and the fighting back with the military and stuff. And I saw that a lot as a kid. It was on TV like every fucking weekend, it felt like. And I know every second of it, and I love it.
Oh, wow.
Heaven help us. Yeah, I love that movie. And it's great. But it was another flop. It didn't do that great. So he had that company, a Latent Image, and they just went bankrupt. Like he was in the red hard.
Totally,
Yeah, around this time. It was sad. So he was commissioned to do, because he had a commercial history. He did ad stuff in the mid 60s before Living Dead. And so he kind of went back to it. He started doing like these cheap sports docs that would get, thrown off to like ABC Sports. And he did one on O.J. Simpson called The Juice is Loose. Yeah, The Juice is Loose.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what he did right before Martin.
Wow.
So got in touch with that Rubenstein guy, who's, I guess, somewhat controversial, but Rubenstein saw some promise and said, okay, Latent Image went bankrupt. They're gone. And then they did, why am I forgetting the name? They did a new company. And so Romero was thinking like, okay, let's do the sequel. Let's get back to basics and do Night of the Living Dead 2. And I think they wanted to get a better budget, and they were sorting that out. So in the meantime, they did this really low budget movie. Martin's really low budget.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he did that. It didn't do great. It did okay. I have a tiny personal experience. I'm in New York City in the summer of 1978 with my mom because we're looking to like move from Los Angeles or California to New York. And I see at the Waverly, because we're in the Village, and I was such a mental kid about movies that I saw it said Martin at midnight, and I went, what at midnight? Like there's a horror movie called Martin? I didn't know Night of the Living Dead. And I was just like, why is it Martin? Martin, like Frankenstein, Dracula, and Martin. And so I never forgot that. Yeah. And so that's at the Waverly, which is now the IFC Center, which is horrible new title, right?
Yeah.
So it played there for like 2 years. And one of the big problems with Martin was Libra Releasing, I think it was called. They had two big holdings. Martin and a little movie called Eraserhead, and Eraserhead totally ate Martin's lunch. It was just no comparison, and it faded fast and hard. Yeah. And it's a strange, sort of difficult film, Martin. And of course, we're going to talk about that. So Martin was obscure, and as we all know, he hit the ground running. And Dawn of the Dead is the phenomenon. I think we even did an hour on it.
We sure did.
But I will say this, George. It's a lot to say. And he has said it's his best work, and it's the favorite of his own film. So
yeah, which is interesting. Because and I think more into my generation in the DVD era. That's where I kind of come in. By that point, a lot of the gore hounds, the horror movie Fangoria crowd wasn't so hot on this Martin movie, because they're all about, the zombie flicks and everything. And so this movie also kind of got
exploding.
Yeah, exactly. And this movie kind of got lost in the shuffle. But I do remember being kind of a, completist, and being so into Romero that grabbing it, and it made a huge impression on me because there's some really kind of fucked up, insane, weird imagery and scenes in this movie,
just great filmmaking.
There is, of course. And it always kind of stuck with me as like, man, that is a really cool flick, and that is really...
it's one of those little gems.
Yeah.
There's the big directors and they make the big stuff. And then there's sometimes these little like, oops, and we were saying it's not great, but like After Hours is sort of that for Scorsese. It's sort of another example. Or
right.
like Home Movies by Brian De Palma. Or something.
Yeah. No, totally. It's a very intimate... Kind of
small gem.
Yeah, it's a very intimate film. And one thing, too, that's kind of just something that dawned on me earlier was, how he really is, he makes a lot of films in this genre, but he really reinvents the genre, and he really takes, like with like the zombie film, he's totally reinvented and modernized it, and here he's kind of doing the same thing with the vampire genre, because here, Martin is following this kid who, is definitely, he's traumatized. He has he kind of has a mental illness that keeps him separate from society and has a real compulsion, that's really driving him. And it kind of sets the stage for where these kind of modern vampire movies would go, where you're kind of using
I know what you mean.
you're kind of using the vampire tropes as a metaphor for like addiction, like Abel Ferrara is the addiction or something, so it really, and he also does that with, obviously the zombie genre too, and making it, a social commentary, social satire. So he's always kind of finding ways to, turn the genre on its head, so to speak. And
innovate
I think,
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like deconstructing horror movies, right? Like pulling them apart, and like in the way that Martin is like saying like, well, that's all fake, that's all. He's commenting on earlier works of fiction about vampires and stuff, saying like, oh, garlic's not real, that doesn't work, or whatever. So they're trying to strip it away, and it has this sort of it's being vague about whether or not he's like really a vampire, or if he's like actually just some kind of deranged boy. And I think that psychological underpinning of the film, like for me, like it gave it a sort of it always had, among my crowd, it had sort of that I came up with, like watching films like at that, in the early days, the Alamo and stuff, people like Lars. This film had sort of a reputation for being like the hip choice of Romero movies to check out, because it's low budget and because it's psychological. So like before I even saw it, I knew it was a good pick off the shelf, because people that I liked, people that I admired were into it. But yeah, I think that psychological underpinning and deconstructing horror makes it really so fascinating for people. It makes it just sort of eternally relevant too, because we still have like all these tropes of like vampires and werewolves, all that shit's still in culture, like super hard. Totally. But we also have like serial killers are like super hard in culture now, which they weren't like at maybe so much like when Martin first was being developed. So this feels pretty interesting, like kind of like a crossover where it's like in time, where it's like deconstructing the old mythic like vampires and like famous monsters, famous monster type horror, like deconstructing that, saying that's not real, but like here's a real monster, is a guy that goes around and like murders people and he's insane and thinks that he's like a killer, thinks he's a monster.
He does drink their blood, but it's in this like hard, grim modern context. I will say, just today I have some breaking news, gentlemen, that I never knew this. I read in one of the cult movie books, from the early 80s, and there was some interview that he's quoted as saying, well, the germ of the idea came from, I was reading about this California serial killer who did drink the blood of his victims. And then he didn't say it, but I know who it is. It's Richard Chase.
I was going to bring that up.
From Sacramento. So he really is doing that. I mean, the film is inspired by a case of a serial killer, and then like Bela Lugosi movies, and then he intersects right in the film. Yeah,
we should just throw onto that. Richard Chase, the Sacramento Vampire, as he was also called in the papers, kind of also linked to another low budget film much later, William Friedkin's Rampage. If you've ever seen that movie, that is.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh man, that's actually worth a potential one fucking hour. But it's an interesting, flawed film that has a complicated editing history. But it is about Richard Chase, and I think there's a lot of links to that here, because in this film, Martin, it is about vampires. It has the tropes. We get the black and white flashbacks to some other time period where it's much this sort of gothic setting in a more traditional vampire film. Yeah. We're sort of making commentary on vampire films. There's even a great scene in the movie where he dresses up as like a traditional vampire to scare his uncle
with the plastic Halloween teeth and everything, like ooh ooga booga,
which is
superstitious Catholic uncle,
which is great. But he's portrayed here as a blood junkie, which is much more like disturbing, and it gets into some bizarre psychosexual territory that I think is more modern
and really rough.
And makes it, which is
well,
obviously much more interesting.
If we can,
sure.
I mean, as we're recording this now, a very hot topic is the Netflix show that's about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yep.
And I would have thought of Jeffrey Dahmer rewatching Martin now, but it's certainly on my mind more than ever because there's some real similarities. I mean,
totally.
He does drink people's blood, but he also there's times when Martin is saying like, because he puts them, he tries. What his plan is to hit them with hypodermics and put them out.
Yes.
Put his victims out so that they go to sleep. And he's like, I don't want to do anything to you that causes you pain. I just want you to like lie down and go to sleep. And that is like from Jeffrey Dahmer's, mouth. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like that's creepy. Parallel.
Right. That is so weird. That because people, you when you're first learning about serial killers, you think like these people are like to kill and enjoy killing, and they want, but then it gets so much twisted. It gets so twisted when you realize like that the killing is just a side effect of all the gross things that they actually want to do,
Well,
like
it depends
all
on
the
the
horrible
person.
things. Yeah. No, I'm not saying. Well, yeah, I'm just saying that I said some of them, but I mean, when you see the psychosexual underpinnings of it is
It's hard to also not see the similarities between the Dahmer things. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Also, because this movie is also about loneliness. And both characters are severely isolated, incredibly alienated, unable to connect, with people at all. And they also, have these lavish fantasies, and they, talk about the fantasies. And also, if you notice too, in the, I'm sure we'll get into it when we talk about kind of that middle section where he invades the home invasion scene, but he is kind of also narrating that with some interesting lines of after he commits the crime in the house, he's sort of like, well, maybe someday, I can do this without the blood, and
someday maybe I'll get to do it awake without the blood part. Just do it with somebody and then be together and talk all night.
And I'm doing this, and and that also was reminiscent even in the speech patterns of the actor who's portraying Dahmer in the Netflix show. Like it really feels very similar.
It's extra chilling. Extra chilling. Can I just make one observation? I want to put a button on Romero if I can.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, it's like a little late, because we've shifted all these great places. But just to put a button on it, I wanted to throw out there that the thing about Martin that really distinguishes it for me is he did something that George Lucas did not do, in my opinion, because for George Romero, for George Romero, zombies are Star Wars, meaning like, every decade goes by and he can't get financing for this, and this, and he wants to do this, and this, but they're like, oh, we'll just totally bankroll anything. Just call it Of the Dead. And he's like, okay, fine. Maybe I'll try to make this interesting. And it sounds a little frustrating, and that reminds me of George Lucas, who's like, everything keeps settling back to Star Wars, and he does that to himself. But the thing is that Romero did a great thing, and he bucked that, and he didn't just fall in line. And because Martin is really, really different than a zombie attack movie.
Totally,
it's a totally different animal. So I really wanted to shout out to him and respect him for that.
If you're going to put a button on a past thing, let me put a button on something too.
That's it.
Wait, are we talking about serial killers? Because I'm not done talking about serial killers.
Okay, well then I'm gonna bring it back there, because let me put a button on Dahmer, and then you're next. The last thing just about the comparisons between Dahmer being in the zeitgeist in this movie and everything is also with this character in this movie, Martin. It's also that he has this obsession and this fixation, this compulsion that he doesn't even understand. He's coming to terms with trying to understand it, and that's very reminiscent of the show too. And it's also, to me, also tracking this sort of doomed attempt at him trying to achieve intimacy, and that also is very Dahmer, and just it's just very on the same track.
Well, I guess they have the same pathology, and I don't know what maybe Romero did research, or he just kind of thought this all up. I wonder. I don't know.
It's weird, but
that's what I was going to mention, was like it's this trope that goes through a lot of serial killer stuff, and it's so interesting that this is in this so early, because I was thinking as long as we're on the subject of serial killers that start with a duh and end with an I wasn't actually thinking about Dahmer when I was watching this. I was thinking about Dexter because there's like these like tropes that appear in that show too. Like he's got the hypodermic needle clenching his teeth. He's really introverted. Yeah, he can't really. It's a trope of. I wonder. I mean, it's such an accurate thing that they pick up on like that type. I mean, I don't know. It's weird that like this film is so early in picking up on that stuff that like we kind of take for granted now that
it really is.
Oh, it really is. Oh, I mean, of course we didn't understand any of this stuff. I mean, we were putting these people to death, before we understood the pathology,
Right. Isn't this before like the FBI put together that unit to go track people down and stuff?
It's like, before the term serial killer.
Yeah, it's right. It's crazy, and to even think about too that the film is even kind of smart enough, I guess, to also ride that line between empathy for the outsider, but then also here's the intruder predator, and then we're going to examine the tension between those two, like between those two. We're going to show you the empathetic side, and then we're also going to remind you, no, he's a horrible, fucking terrible person too.
I know,
yeah, and that's
just not unlike the Dahmer show on Netflix.
Right,
I know.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah,
it's strange. Just the timing's a little strange for us. I mean, just because we didn't say, hey, let's do Martin. It's kind of like the Dahmer thing that everybody's watching. We didn't at all.
No.
It's sort of one of those weird things.
If I can just kickstart a new topic before we get into the film and the scenes and everything, because there's so many great scenes to talk about in the movie, is I just wanted to kind of start with talking about how low budge this movie really in fact is, because it's really kind of remarkable that the actual figure is that we're actually talking about $100,000 budget here for this movie. They've even put other numbers out that are more inflated out there to make it seem like it was a bigger production, but the real number is about $100,000, and it's the type of low budget movie where we're filming at the fucking sound guy's house. Like the sound guy's house is the location, for the movie, and of course you mentioned it's a collaboration with a lot of friends. You have George Romero's soon to be wife is kind of the female lead in the film, and he wrote the script kind of tailor made for her, which I thought was pretty cool. And I also thought was cool too is that the DP for this film, this was his first film, and I think he did a killer job. And and he's from, and this is kind of a throw to you, Tom, he's from the Pittsburgh suburb, or whatever it is, of Braddock, Pennsylvania, right. This post-industrial kind of nightmare. Right. And so he's from there, so obviously he's capturing it beautifully, in terms of this depressing...
He has an eye for it. He's not like some West German guy who's like, that might be interesting too, but he's like, no, let's go down this alleyway. Because I know that like the rust is going to be falling into the collecting out the water or whatever. No, you're right. And well, it gets even weirder because there's actually an MVP in here named Tony Bubba.
Tony Bubba.
B-U-B-A. Tony Bubba, and he has his own films, and they're documentaries about the town Braddock. I wouldn't call it a suburb. It's more like
I don't know what it is.
Stuff. Yeah, it's like
the town where that John Fetterman was the mayor of, right? The guy's running for Senate against Dr. Oz. Yeah, he was the mayor of that town, and it's still kind of a. I think it's still kind of falling apart, but he was when he was the mayor trying to build it back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, Braddock is not suburban. It's just outside. It's an industrial hellhole kind of just outside of the town of Pittsburgh, and it was a steel mining town. It's one of those Rust Belt things where like the factory jobs dried up, and then there's nothing, and then everything's just decaying. There's no tax money to like keep up the roads, and you see it in the film, and it's one of the great depictions of 70s malaise that I've seen, in all ways, like from the grocery store to the hobos to literally the rusty alleyways. It's a great snapshot, and it was 16 millimeter, like you're saying, is cheap, and everyone is helping out. Even we got early OG Tom Savini, guys.
Yeah.
Him. And he's doing the right. True. He's doing the minimal. He's doing the minimal effects. No heads are exploding. Right. But he goes. Hey, we need somebody to play like somebody's brother for a second. Like Tom will do it. Go. And he's like, hey, everybody, I'm a character in the movie for 2 seconds. And then guess what? Even the director's like, I'll be the priest. Forget it. And George Romero sits down and is the priest. So. And
there was some funny backstory on Savini, like just being in like he was a local theater kid, and they did like a production with him, and he was like that was like they were going to make it to a movie, like Romero did like a theater production that Savini was an actor in, and then like they never went to never became an actual movie, but they still became friends or whatever. And then Savini went off on his own and like learned how to do that stuff, and then came back and like I think he came back to the movie like and wanted to be an actor in the movie. And it's kind of like, hey, I also do this now. And it's like, oh,
wow.
shit, like
there you go.
Yeah, because it's early on in his kind of career in that way,
Right.
And one thing too, just about the Braddock of it all, is I think there is a subtext that's in the film, sort of about the economic depression of the. I mean, they actually work that into the film. I know the uncle character Kuda. We got to talk about Kuda. He Tony Bubba and Kuda. He talks about right? He does talk about like he kind of makes references when he's sitting around in the kitchen to like what's going on and in the surrounding community and everything. And I think there is, we're talking 78. It's post Vietnam War. We're talking about the trauma and the kind of things from out of that too. And I think it's a cool snapshot of that. Post Watergate. That's also just worked into the aesthetic of this movie, which I think is super cool. Anyway,
right. Well, it's actually like we're saying. It's actually 1976, so it's that. It's
that
like bicentennial mural that's like faded and like cracking paint, And you know what? It's actually not unlike Devo. Not to get totally sidetracked, because that's Akron, Ohio, and they were this bizarre manifestation from like a scream from the Rust Belt, So there's a lot of weird energy, that's cool energy, coming from mid-70s Rust Belt, and it's totally ignored because, again, what I really love is any film gets a plus for me if it's not in the coasts. It's like, okay, New York, sure. And like for me, a lot of times LA is nowhere. It's just like Culver City, like it's not even any setting. But when you've got the richness of like I love blaxploitation movies set in small areas like Galveston, Texas. I think this movie Together Brothers is set in Galveston, Texas. And guess what? It's a fascinating, enriching experience just because of the location, Right. So anyway, it's one of those things. That's another character, the film.
Totally. And an asset, because it's like since Romero's like from there and like and primarily worked there, he's able to kind of get so much out of the location. He's not going into a place shooting a low budget, like we're going to get a tax break in Tucson if we shoot in Tucson kind of thing.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to be able to call up these people that I know to like cook for the crew or whatever, just like you're able to push the money so much further. And that's one thing that's so cool about this movie is like you can tell it's cheap when you watch it, but you don't know how it's way cheaper than you could ever imagine. Like,
yeah.
I think it is. Yeah. But of course it looks great, and it just shows that there's a lot of raw talent that George has, and he got a good eye. He's picked a lot of good talent. Even the lead, I was just going to mention the lead, John Amplas, who he saw in a theater production too, by the way. And the thing is, Martin was going to be like in his 40s in the script originally. I was just reading about this, but he just saw Amplas and said, "Well, you just changed the script, and you're going to be like young. You're going to be 20, even though the guy was 25.
Such a better idea."
And I know, but it would have been an older guy. And I guess because maybe Richard Chase was kind of older. I don't know, but anyway, Amplas. And what gets me is that Amplas. I've been an Amplas watcher for years, and and just for you guys listening now, you will see a glimpse of him as a Puerto Rican gang leader in Dawn of the Dead for 2 seconds, and then he's gone. And it's like, what the hell? And then I think, don't quote me, I think he's in this movie called the Blood. I'm forgetting the name. Blood something. Forget it. But like, for 2 seconds in this incredibly cheap film.
It's in Creepshow too, right?
Yeah. Oh, he is in Day of the Dead as a more real character. He's the one of the civilian people in Day of the Dead. I just rewatched that. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, he's interesting, and I was hoping we'd see more from him because it's pretty weird, guys. Like a guy who's a total unknown is carrying an entire film. And he does a good job.
Insane. He does a great job.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's in Night Riders for a minute. Another Romero weird flick.
That's so weird.
And he's playing an introverted character that doesn't talk that much, like he talks a little, but I mean, he's described as mute a lot, or pretending to be deaf, and
but he's got a good expressive face. No, it's a great performance by.
And he looks sort of like a classic monster in a way. He looks like a vampire too, and just enough.
He kind of looks like
Yes.
he kind of looks like a young Angus Young to me. That's what I see when I see.
Interesting. I totally hear you.
You know what I'm saying?
Wowie. But mixed with like something else a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
nice
yeah.
one.
That's what I
Well,
see.
so do we want to get into some set pieces, like some like
Yeah,
content in the film?
sure. Yeah, one thing I was going to say before we get into it. It's kind of interesting, on the Wikipedia page, I noticed that there was a quote from George Romero about the film, and sort of talking about that. It's a cool quote. Obviously, he says it kind of in the same breath as it being one of his favorite movie that he did of his own. And he says here, Martin is designed to that all those supernatural monsters that are part of our literary tradition are, in essence, expurgations of ourselves. They are beasts we've created in order to exorcise the monster from within us. I tried to show in Martin that you can't just slice off this evil part of ourselves and throw it away. It's a permanent part of us, and we'd better try and understand it. Again, going back to that idea of like understanding the pathology, and maybe he really was tapped into that and researching that, because that's what really is remarkable about this movie.
Must have been.
Yeah. So
because he's not just a killer, like
No.
it's not lazy. It's not like, and then he stabs the person and then he walks away. It's like there's a whole pathology. There's a whole world going on.
right.
And you know what I mean? And it's complex, and that's what the film is doing. That's what the film is. It's an exploration, essentially.
It's presented vague enough at times to where you're not sure, like if he's Dracula or if he's like Walter Mitty, and just imagining this stuff happening too, right? There's enough. It gives you enough room for doubt here and there, like, well, maybe he didn't kill that girl on the train, or maybe he, maybe those flashbacks that you mentioned earlier are actually just fantasies, So like, there's enough room there for you to doubt up until, at a certain point, I think you get to be pretty sure that he's at least like killing people, but you're still not sure, like, but
in what way, to the extent, and all that. I know. Well, I was reading, and no one's sure if the woman in the house attack, the house scene, it's not resolved about what happens to her, because he kills the boyfriend who's run outside. But you're not sure what happens to that woman, and I thought back, I was like, yeah, you don't, So, well, the film it's a bit of a fever dream, absolutely.
It is, and one of the other elements that they use in the movie too to further blur the lines, which is kind of weird, is this idea that there's like this familial, like vampire history that they have, or something where it like runs in the family.
The bloodline curse.
Yeah, there's a curse. There's a curse.
Old world shit.
Old world shit. There's a curse in the bloodline, and of course, Uncle Kuda is the guy who's kind of the gatekeeper of that, and so that kind of blurs the lines too. But anyway, should we get into the movie now? I think so. The movie opens, with a grisly scene on a train here, where we're introduced to him and him. He murders her, right? That's what happens.
It sure looks like it.
It sure looks
pretty
like
rough.
it. It's a pretty rugged scene, and that's the way that we're sort of introduced to the character. And
at the
then
end of that scene, you get kind of a thing where like he's nervous, and then everyone's like looking for this girl, and then another girl with the same hair walks into the frame, and they're all relieved to see her. So it gives you a second to think like, oh, maybe he didn't kill her, and that's really her there, and it's just a fantasy. It gives you enough of a break there.
True. Yeah, and it is weird because it kind of introduces also this idea that, he's a monster, but then he's also kind of regretful about what he's doing, and it introduces the complex pathology like right out of the gate. And then from there, we soon sort of understand that I think he was living in Indiana, I think is what was happening, and then he's coming now to visit extended family in Braddock, where he shacks up, like we said, with his uncle. And the female lead is his cousin, right? Is that what she is, or
I think so. Was she
Romero's wife?
I think the uncle says my
cousins.
daughter. Well,
Maybe that's what it is. That's right.
I think the uncle says my daughter.
Cousin.
Sounds right.
Cousin. So so then they're kind of, he's introduced in this family dynamic, but right off the bat, Uncle Kuda is trying to hex him, in terms of
very warm welcome.
Very warm welcome.
He's he's basically like, I'm keeping an eye on you.
Yeah.
And if any dead bodies show up, I'm going to cut you down.
Yeah.
And there's the bathrooms on the right. And there's new towels in the closet.
Yeah.
What the fuck, dude?
Yeah. He's telling him, he's like, no, I'm your cousin. He's saying Martin's the cousin. But he's his older cousin, and she's a niece, I think. I thought
Whatever,
that was the
who
layout.
cares?
But
So,
yeah, you're right. That's right.
Kuda. Side
well,
note.
Uncle Kuda, so it makes that's why he's uncle.
Right.
So side note, Kuda is such a weird name, and we're having fun with it. And I was like, what? And it's just because he's supposed to own this like meat, like a butcher shop. And so they used the existing Kuda butcher shop. And they just went, oh, that's your fucking last name here.
Oh, okay.
So that's why. And you see it in the film. You see the sign.
Okay, right.
Mystery
Amazing.
solved.
Yeah, of course. But so early on, Tom, there's a lot of incredible set pieces. Is there any one in particular that you wanted to jam on? Because I mean, like you had mentioned that home invasion scene, and that scene in particular to me has a lot of.
Yeah, well, let's jam out on it. Actually, this might be sort of fun. I'm just going to read my notes as I was watching it. Very brief. Hold on. So I'm just writing tension and suspense using spaces, places, and time. Phone beeping.
Shit, it's fucked up. Wait a minute. I gotta do it again.
Doors and doors. And so,
that's beautiful.
Start the conversation that way.
Well,
it's almost comical. Yeah, right. It almost sounds like it. No, but it's almost gets comical because I'm really serious. There's so many doors, and I've always been mystified, and I don't want to know what the layout is of this house because it seems so strangely complex. Like, well, you go down a few steps and there's a door, but then you turn and there's another door, and then the door goes to the next door, and it's like it's kind of hallucinatory.
Yeah.
And it also adds to a certain kind of like Lewis Carroll madness,
Yeah.
like
I wrote late 60s mid-century modern labyrinth. That's what I wrote watching the scene, and it's just like because all the different textures on the walls, like there's like the weird wood, there's like brick.
Bathroom has a weird wallpaper.
Yeah, there's very weird patterns, and every room is a different pattern, and there's like these different shag rugs, like different colors, shag carpeting,
and everything. There's like steps. There's a lot of like those rooms that have steps and shit. No,
like
but
chateau
guys,
kind of layouts. Yeah.
Yeah, but the MVP. Fucking phone beeps, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm dialing. I'm dialing. Get off the thing. Are you on the? And it's like.
Louis, are you on the other phone? Louis! Hang up the phone!
I love that. It was so. It's like a. You know what it's like? It's like nightmare logic. It's like, aren't you on the phone? And it's like, I thought you were on the phone with me. And it's like, what's the number? Dial it. It was great.
And
I forgot the number.
Phone tone too, right? Doesn't the scene end with this like a tone?
Sorry.
Go for it.
Can I say one thing just real quick? Right before the phone scene, another nightmare logic moment in that same scene, and this is just this pretty paint by numbers sort of in terms of the story. It's like a home invasion scene. Yeah. Martin's going in. He's basically follows this woman into her home, but then she's sleeping with another man there. But the scene that is the moment that is very nightmarish is when he busts in there and he just stabs homeboy with the syringe and then leaves the room. But her reaction is, I don't know him.
About this now. That's no reason to get upset about anything, okay?
I don't know him!
Dude, that's the MVP line of the day. That one, it's like because the thing is the guy. Well, I mean, what logically the guy's thinking that's your husband. He caught us cheating.
Right,
and it's like, and she's like, full stop. That would be a problem over here, and that's a thing. But this is an enormous problem. Problem B, because I don't know this guy. He's a stranger, and he doesn't give a shit if you're my husband. It's like all bets are off because I'm disoriented. So terrifying.
And then
it's so scary. And then go ahead.
Last bit, then it's your time. To just tie it back to the phone. Then when she goes to the phone, it's burp, burp, beep, burp, 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 which is amazing. And then she's like, I don't know. I lost the number. I forgot the number.
I can't get through. I forgot the number. Wait,
And it's there's some realism in that is very scary. Just to say that. Now, Marcus Thomas.
No, I know because she's saying like 911, and it's like that's the cops, and it's like no, it's not, and it's like call the local hospital, and she's like I don't know the fucking local hospital's phone number, so she's calling information. And it's all very nervous, dream logic of like everything's knotted and tied, and you're tripping
Anxiety
everything.
dream. It's an anxiety dream, Marcus.
Anxiety.
Yeah. Well, I think just when you're talking about phone numbers, it's reminding me that like all of us used to probably have a place in our brain where we could file away just long lists of phone numbers, but that's all just gone now. Like, all that room is spared now, so we can think up filled with George Romero facts. But the thing that gets me is when he stabs that guy, he sticks a needle in that guy, and he's like, he shot me with something, and just the idea that you don't know, you got injected with something.
I know.
I don't care who finds out about us. He shot me with something. Now call somebody. Call the police, hospital, ambulance, anybody. Call somebody.
But you don't know what it is.
Scary.
And you're trying to think of what you can do to to put a stop on the
much time do
situation,
you
a
have?
stopgap before whatever happens to you. And it goes on for a long time. And just being witness to their back and forth, I think allows you to put yourself in that situation and think about like what would it's a home invasion gone wrong, and the people like have enough time to kind of like process it and like talk about it, and I think that like just makes it even more horrific
they
to
get
watch. I was on the
separated.
edge of my seat, and I've seen this movie like so many times, but on this rewatch I was so edgy.
I'll dare say it's always the scene that retains for me with Martin.
Totally.
I'll say it's one of the big scenes. I guess I'll qualify it in horror, but I mean, if we're saying that horror, it's easily one of my favorite horror scenes. It's demented, but also masterfully executed. And just total side note, like I said, he was known for making TV commercials in the '60s, and try to look them up; they're interesting. And a lot of TV commercials is like jazzy, snazzy editing. And there's not a ton in Night of the Living Dead. The pace is pretty slow, but he really exercises his like jazz riff fucking editing chops.
Yeah.
Scene.
Yeah.
I mean?
And well, there's also just like so many cool aesthetic choices that's being hit. You're being hit with at once that are also no budget aesthetic choices. Not only just like the labyrinth set piece that we're in, but also just obviously the writing being nightmare logic. The thing is so crazy too.
Yeah. I'm dialing.
Yeah. But I also love, and I know you love this because it's also used to great effect in Dawn of the Dead, is the fucking delay pedal shit. The shaw.
Of course.
And that's also going on in the scene too, so you get that real awesome delay pedal stuff. But when you mentioned doors, this also a little detail stood out to me too, is when dude runs out of the house, and he locks the dude out. Martin locks the dude out of the house, and then he runs back in and he chases after the woman, and then she is running into some sort of like very tight closet space, and she's between two doors that have kind of pinned
Because
her
there's
in.
a door on the other side of that small closet. Of course. There's another goddamn door.
But
I'm so glad we're spending like 20 minutes on this.
I know.
That's what I was hoping.
It's great. But it's like that moment, seeing that, and just, I don't know, the choice to put the camera on the ceiling and say, okay, we're shooting the scene where she's stuck between two doors is really a great no budget tension thing there. So I just had to hats off to that sort of set piece because it's very scary. It's very scary. Anyway.
No, it's it's just you can deconstruct the whole movie, and I'm glad you brought up the textures because I didn't consciously think of this, but every little quadrant of this strange house does have a different tone to it, and I think it actually helps. I'm sure they didn't do any set design; they just walked into some house.
Yeah,
but, it helps you not maybe get oriented, but it does help you. Like it's not all just white wall after white wall. So there's all these dynamically different looking spaces, so it's like it makes it almost more disorienting. Like now we're in the place that has this kind of wallpaper, and it's like, oh, now there's shag carpeting and the lighting's different, and like these are glass doors now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
There's a lot of texture in the movie. Like the camera lingers on a lot of interesting moments. There's a lot of really beautiful close-ups of like some dolls, some toys, a magic trick. There's a lot of
cutting celery even.
Cutting celery, yeah. Paper bags. There's just a lot of like just really interesting close-ups on those things that stay with you, and it's great. It's just really good filmmaking, I guess, and that's one of the things that someone who's a gifted filmmaker like him can can take
it
all these
is
elements and make something great.
It really feels like someone who did cut commercials for like 8 years. It really does. You know, it's like a total compliment, you know, like, because I don't know, Night of the Living Dead's awesome. And of course it has great filmmaking in it, and it's a classic. But it's like the pacing and everything, you know, and the wide shot after wide shot kind of thing. It's different, you know, then it's a real punchiness when it needs to be in Martin, you know. And well, we could even talk about the shock ending, which got me the first time I saw it. Because the film is like, has that pace, especially at that part of the movie, you know, he finds that ironically, and it's one of the great horrifying ironies, is that the lady who he has been getting intimate with and sleeping with, she decides to take her own life, guess what, with razor blades. And he just mumbles like, I didn't do it, when he comes upon her in the bathtub. But what I'm saying is it has this sort of languid, really, this one was a huge bummer, by the way, right, overall, but it has this languid bummer pace, and then it's like 3, 2, 1. Nosferatu. Kuda, and he's like, fucking stop this now! And then like you're seeing Martin getting hit with a fucking you know, blood splattering stake, and it's just like, and then it's like, and the movie's over, you know. And it's just like it's just so punchy. I love that kind of stuff.
It's great.
And and then we're not mentioning one thing, and I just wanted to bring this up, something I just learned today too, I think is really interesting, is we've got a little time for this. It's a tiny 1-2 thing, but you know, there's supposed to have been voiceover, where right, okay, so continual Martin voiceover, pontificating, talking about himself, and I think he even might talk to camera. There's a hint of that because there's one of the trailers. He is doing that, and you guys should look it out. Everybody should seek that out. It's one of the
I've seen the TV spot, right?
Saw that? Yeah.
My name is Martin, and I'm 84 years old. People think I'm crazy when I tell them how old I am, or else they think I'm some kind of ghost.
From the director of Night of the Living Dead.
And he's like, look, I'm Martin, and like, I need blood or something. And he's talking to camera.
I'm Martin, I'm 84 years old. Some people think I'm crazy when I tell them how old I am. You know,
it's
like,
very disconcerting. And I wonder if that, and I wonder if
commercial.
That was from,
it's like a commercial.
Yeah, there you go. But I just wonder if like the voiceover had a tone like that, and he maybe was like to camera sometimes. I don't know. But
he did talk, there was going to be a lot of voiceover and a lot of dialogue, but he cut all that out, right? Which
got a lot quieter. No, but what I'm saying is, I wonder, because there is some exposition on his inner life. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, there is.
In the radio conversation, he's talking to. He's on talk radio as the Count.
I might make a mistake.
A mistake?
I might make a mistake and get caught.
Hear that, night-timers? The Count is getting thirsty.
And there is some exposition, like I say, about his inner workings. And I wonder if maybe that was transposed from if we would have heard him doing inner monologue. And there was this more interesting, innovative.
I love that. Yeah, I love that theory. No, I love that theory because you expect there to be some if they're going to introduce a radio host like that, you would expect there to be some sort of like foregrounding of it. Like you might see the guy's cigarette and the microphone in the control booth or something, you know, or a radio or something, but it doesn't
on the
happen.
air sign.
It's just Martin talking, and then you hear the guy going like, "You're listening to, you know, the Count." So yeah, it does seem like that could be a save, and there are like other interesting ways he's using audio to like explain Martin's inner world too, instead of just him talking. But like I noticed a moment he's like in his room just kind of sulking, and you can hear Christine and her husband arguing next door. You know, you can hear them having an argument, and he's just in the room sort of being introverted and processing that. But it's like, it's just another way of like taking the dialogue away from Martin, but giving it like giving another context so that you understand the inner workings of the character's mind.
Yeah, it seems like George did this interesting final pass on the film, and I'd like to know more. I mean, you know,
well,
I have a feeling. That's the thing. You want to get to the big news here. This is actually the reason we're doing Martin.
Yeah.
Because people might have heard in about a year cycle here, because this was announced almost a year ago, that that DP, the cinematographer we were talking about, that young guy, he found the original version of the film. And
Unbelievable.
it's 3 hours, and it's all black and white, which is interesting because the fantasies are black and white, and actually Romero wanted the entire film to be black and white, but of course the money guys, the producers, were like, no, we need red blood, we need color. So anyway, this is the one he wanted, black and white, also 3 hours, and my mind is just reeling. Maybe that does have talk to the camera, voiceover stuff, and the radio. I don't know, and no one knows until you can see it. But the good news is it's coming out like within weeks, because the company just announced that it is a pre-Christmas release. They're just doing the final touches.
Wow.
So there'll be a Blu-ray and maybe some screenings. I don't know, but
That's amazing.
3 hour or 2 hours and 45 minutes.
It's so interesting. I always wonder if I can never tell if it's just the actual story is lost to time and those are just marketing things. So it's like a 3 hour black and white movie. That just sounds like a work print.
Like an answer print to go to editing.
Like it's in process. He's working stuff out, but
I don't know.
And they're going to call it the director's cut and stuff like that. You know what I mean? As a marketing stunt. So it's always confusing to tell. I guess we'll find out.
No one knows. I mean, I tried to find out, and everyone's doing what we're doing right now, which is guessing.
Yeah.
So they're being a little cagey about it. But we'll find out, and it'll be released. Meaning, what I'm saying is, there might be an incomplete Foley track, and then maybe they're going to have one track in the audio that has restored, car starting sounds and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm guessing, speculating, but I don't know how complete this 3 hour one is. You're right. At least it's all black and white.
It's going to be interesting to really compare between the two and to know that this is going to be twice as long as what we're seeing now. And just as a
I know
there's a whole nother movie within the movie.
There's going to be a lot more Braddock rust.
There is.
There's a lot more like life on those streets.
You know what?
And the texture.
It actually might be a lot like Mark Borchart's Northwestern. It might have a lot of. It might be the lost Northwestern.
There might be more Savini character, full, 10 minutes on the Savini character, or the brother or the boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah,
and, Well, we'll find out. We're all going to find out really soon. Maybe we'll do another 1 fucking hour on the.
We'll do an update. We'll do a little bonus. Yeah.
So
there was just to mention you mentioned the red blood, and I was watching Tom Savini talk about the movie, and this is the blood color in horror movies has been something that's kind of just confounded me since I was a kid, right? Or just in any old movies, I would show my friends in high school an old Suspiria or something. I'm not trying, trying to think of another famous
Dawn of the
Dead.
Blood is pretty weird.
Fearless Vampire
Suspiria.
Killers, and people would be like, that blood, their takeaway would be like, that blood looks fake, and I was just kind of looking past it and being like, well, blood, yes, it used to look like shit in these movies, but it was always stuck out as something that it bugs people, and so it stuck out to me. And Savini's talking about it, and he's going like, well, of course the blood looks terrible in this, and he actually says why. He says he says it's this stage blood that would look good in the theater productions.
Right.
It's the film stock.
But in the movies, it looks like melted crayon, But then he mentions this Dick Smith formula that came out later that became sort of the staple blood of movies.
Right.
Is it not like the film processing, or is it something with the film stock and why it winds up?
That's what I always thought, but I think he's saying that it's actually just this stage blood that
he has his own take on things, his own perspective. Because I think, Evan, you're absolutely right. I think there was this unpleasant surprise with the processing going through and the color temperature and everything for Dawn of the Dead. And I think they were like, oh shit, all the zombies makeup looks wrong. It was supposed to be darker blue or something. And I think the red, they did something thinking the red would wind up one way for the blood in Dawn of the Dead, but then the color temperatures and stuff would happen.
They're picking their battles. They're picking their battles probably with the color timing.
And they're kind of rolling the dice on those colors.
Yeah.
So the normal people's the non-zombie people's skin tone has to be right at the expense of the zombies.
That's what I'm saying.
Smurf town, right?
Yeah.
Or they're going to look like orange or something.
I've also heard. Right.
Yeah.
I've also heard too, like another theory was like the kind of, X rating, concept of like, if you had like lifelike blood, you were more, likely to get the X rating.
Oh, yeah,
I've also heard that. I've also heard that too is like another thing, but you never know if people are blaming it on
Mortal Kombat. Like
Did
they
it?
made it green. No, they made the blood in Mortal Kombat green on Super Nintendo so that it would like pass, be family friendly,
Taxi Driver.
Right, Taxi Driver. Right,
Taxi Driver.
Exactly.
That was going to get an X.
Right.
And they said, okay,
That's
here's
what it
the
was.
thing: you can keep the massacre of the pimps and drug dealers, but you have to desaturate the color like 80%.
That's right.
So suddenly, Taxi Driver looks completely different.
Maybe it's something about some people look at blood and it makes them sick to their stomach and they throw up. Like my dad's like that. He can't like look at a cut on somebody else without like throwing up and getting like wheezy.
Oh, like in real life, yeah.
Queasy, yeah. So I think maybe it's like maybe there's something that's visceral that happens to the human reaction to like seeing accurate colored blood, or they thought it was back then.
Well,
that's why red means bad and danger because like stop sign,
But I also think too about around this time period, 1976. Taxi Driver is 76 or right?
Yeah.
Like 76, 77, 78, when MPAA is going hard on the blood thing, and you are seeing these weird blood colors going on. But I also tend to think about a filmmaker like Don Coscarelli, who's making his own DIY shit, and then in Phantasm, another shout out to another 1 fucking hour episode. But he's like, well, this isn't going to be the problem because what we're going to do in this one season is make the homeboys fucking blood yellow, or whatever it was, or green.
Separate fingers, yellow blood, right? Yeah. I love it. We should do an hour on blood.
Yeah, we are right now.
Yeah. Well, so we've got a minimal amount of time. I've got a couple bite-sized snack things I wanted to bring up. Well, but then okay. Well, let's just get out of the way, and then just bring up maybe one other thing. But no, just one thing. I went down this great wormhole today about Martin. They're of course the Italians. They're insane, and I believe that in preparing for Dawn of the Dead, I bet that guy Rubenstein, the producer, and Romero were cutting these weird deals with the Italians, because what I'm saying is, Dawn of the Dead became zombie and had, guess what, totally different music, much more goblin. It was basically like a rock and roll, almost like video game score, unrelenting, and it was and the edits were different somewhat. So there's a different Dawn of the Dead in Italy, but there's a really, really different Martin.
Yes.
That came out, and it's called Vampire, the W.
So weird.
And I was looking, I don't know, I'd never watched it. I knew about it, but I watched some of it today, and I was blown away. First of all, folks, highly recommend it. Instead of the somber kind of like bummer score of the original Martin, there's pulsating rock and roll, knock you out,
jazz fusion,
jazz fusion, like people like just. Martin like looking up the shadowy stairs early on in the film. It's like, and you think it's like kind of silly, but But it's really a lot of it's from Roller, and the Frankenstein album. But then there's some original stuff, but it's mostly goblins. So and it's totally differently edited. The initial scene in the train is not how the vampire starts, and the ending's a little different. It's wild. So it came out in the Arrow DVD as a bonus. So I highly recommend that to folks because it's a very fun watch in the shadow of watching Martin.
It's so weird to think of like what sort of production deal did they have like to do both those movies with like, but what was going on between Romero and Argento?
Argento was this connective tissue.
I don't know if that's linked to Dawn of the Dead or not, but I do know that Dawn of the Dead, part of the financing for the movie was that, Dario Argento's piece as a producer would give him the Italian distribution rights. And so he could turn it into something that would be for the Italian market. And so I guess the Italian market wanted their jazz fusion interludes and
I have a feeling that they were signing paperwork and they just went, throw Martin in too, and get it.
That's what I think.
I really do. I just like it's called Vampire now, and like Goblin's back, and I love that, by the way, and I love the wild woolliness of life. it's like, yeah, I saw Martin, I saw it in Italy, and it's like, I love that first scene, and it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you know what, that huge rock scene, like with rock and roll music, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's one of my favorite curios about the film, but
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna, I don't know, what's on your guys' mind, but I do have another note here,
Sure.
and it is about his sweaty, confused sexuality.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, we have 5 minutes here, and it's kind of a lot to unpack.
Go for it.
Because, well, it's just like, I'm just going to bring it up. It's just, you guys, whatever you think, like, he does fumble towards having something of a relationship.
Yeah.
With the, he's seeing a married woman who he was delivering groceries to. She seems very sweet, very nice, and actually genuinely likes him. She's not like using him, like in the Graduate, like screwing a young man. Like she found something in him that was vulnerable and kind of sweet. She says that, and he's so weird about sexuality. First of all, he calls it like, like when you do the sexy stuff,
the sexy stuff without the blood. Yeah. We're doing the sexy stuff without the blood.
Yeah, it's basically, I think, because sexuality is a heavy adult thing.
Yeah.
It's a threshold crosser.
Totally.
And I think he just hasn't matured sexually at all. And I think that's one of his maladies.
Right.
Just throwing that out there, guys.
Yeah, well, it does. It does hint at the fact in the movie that maybe this character is going to turn a new leaf, and it kind of is which is a great dramatic choice for obviously the shock ending and everything, and what you see is
the two shock endings,
because we see her actually dead in the bathtub, but it's super bummer. He's like, I didn't do that. All right, isn't that what he says or something like that? And that's also
just
weird.
kept mumbling like, I didn't do it.
And that's nightmare. That's some nightmare shit too. But I
did do it because I did the other razor killings.
Yes,
I didn't do this one
exactly.
Yeah.
But
that is something we. Oh, go ahead. We see sometimes in serial killer movies is that like that does happen sometimes where they try to have like a normal relationship.
Yeah,
I guess it gives it, it's the emotional move that you need to have to feel bad for this person right before you pull, you kill him at the end. I guess.
It does hint with empathy, at least generating it. Well, I read about, I watched Romero talk about this movie, and they were asking him about the vagueness of it all, and like what was the intention? Is he a vampire or whatever? And he does give an answer. It's sort of like one of those like Kubrick explains. 2001 thing. Don't Google that. Don't watch it. Okay, but it's like he does say, Romero says like, I think he's just mixed up. He's had this uncle tell him that he's a vampire his whole life. Right.
It's kind of like Amityville.
So he's just confused, and so that's why he's having this. Yeah. So that's why he's having this like fucked up relationship, because he's just like, I've been told I was a vampire since I was 2 years old, but like I'm having this boyish feelings come up.
God, that's so terrible.
Yeah,
and you're so right, because his daughter, the woman that bonds with Martin, she keeps saying to Kuda and everybody, she's like, stop with the superstition, because you're fucking up people's heads, know. And you're so right, dude. It's like you're a little dinged up in the head, and then it's answered. Like all your mental ding ups are answered by like old world superstition, and that's maybe very common. That's so common.
And while we have 2 minutes, maybe what Romero's trying to say with those black and white flashbacks is those are actually the subliminal things that Kuda is implanting in the psychology of Martin. That here's this vampire lineage that I'm traumatizing you with.
Dude, nice one. Less of, because I was applying it to like he watched Dracula too much, Frankenstein.
That could be too.
Like, but no. Well, maybe there's some bit of a mixture, but I think you're right. I think he's having like this imagining of the old world and back down in East Europe, wherever the hell they're from.
Yeah.
Wow. That's heavy.
Because he's had to deal with Kuda with the fucking garlic and the crosses and Nosferatu.
Incessantly.
Who knows?
Since he was a baby.
Oh, baby. Who knows?
And it's already at the relationship's already at the breaking point as soon as we meet them, because he's like, we see them together because they're walking far apart from each other.
Yeah.
And as soon as he gets to the house, he's like, here's the fucking garlic. Here's the cross. It doesn't do anything. It's all made up.
Scary.
Keeping an eye on you.
Scary.
Right.
And just real quick while we have a minute left, I just wanted to put what a total dig. But it does, like, with that moment with when he meets the woman and it hints at something better, but then the movie is just so tragic in the way that, then he's sort of just we think there's going to be some redemption, but then there's no redemption for this would-be vampire, and then it sort of goes back to this negative sort of feedback loop where he's in isolation and loneliness, and that's all that's left to him. And then, of course, all this that we're theorizing works even more so now for what the ending is, that Kuda is finally just fucking snaps, and he thinks he's a vampire hunter and kills this tragic fucked up kid.
Kuda's as insane as he is.
Yeah, I know.
Kuda has as much of a fantasy bullshit world as he does.
Exactly.
And he buries them in a garden and buries the crucifix.
Yeah,
it's very Amityville too.
Very Amityville. Yeah, 100%.
God, what a movie!
And it's all delivered in that last shot, that zoom pull out to reveal the stake against the heart is some fucking dynamic.
Very heavy with the bloody face. I love it.
All right.
Oh shit! We did an hour.
We did it. I'm
glad we did it, man. Here's to George Romero. We only lost him a few years ago.
I know, and man, he's someone we love. I mean, I think episode 3 of the third episode we ever did a year ago was on Dawn of the Dead. I mean, we love George Romero. He's a total 1 fucking hour ready director.
Not many people. I was going to say, not many people have gotten a return visit here on the show.
I know. Yeah, totally. And there's more we could do. I mean, absolutely. Sure. 1 fucking hour Night Riders might be pretty interesting sometime.
I was thinking that actually.
Yeah.
Major curveball. Yeah, that would be illy. I'm totally down.
I'm down for that too at some point. So, all right. Well, that's the first installment, the first week of 1 fucking Tober, Tober Hoopy over here on 1 fucking hour.
Should we explain that in joke? Because I feel like we're going to keep saying that.
You just
Which
did
one?
Last week, right?
Oh yeah, I can do it every week because it ties into 1 fucking Tober in the fact that let me just explain it all, because this whole month is our 1 year anniversary. We're going to be looking at, since it's October, we're looking at horror movies only for the month. We just did Martin. We're going to be doing The Entity next week with special guest Raimi. And get ready for this, guys. You don't even know what's going to be coming out on this show, because we're not just going to be talking about the movie, but we're going to be talking a lot about the backstory, the true story behind it, and also some other weird ephemera tied to this movie that you won't even believe exists.
You know what? I'm going to be a viewer this time. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, and
I don't know anything.
Okay, good. Keep it that way. Keep it that way. And Marcus. All I got to say is, Marcus, you've never seen it before. I'm going to say this to you on air. No fucking laptop viewing of this movie. This is a movie with on the big screen TV. We got to get the sound going.
Shit.
You're going to have to figure that out. I don't know, brother.
Okay, all right.
Not
I
on
used to
your
watch it
phone.
on my phone. But
This is no
so
phone.
It's in TT, right? That's how you spell it.
No,
you got it.
You got it, brother. Go ahead. No, it's the Entity from 1982, starring Barbara Hershey. Incredible sound design. You got to get the full effect of this movie, because it really is the first half is a audiovisual treat. So there's that, and then
That's next week.
That's next week, and then the week after that, we're going to be doing 1 fucking hour in Ganja and Hess. That's Tom's joint, right?
So that's more, hopefully all of ours. But it's just, I knew we were going to do this movie at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a monster. But side note, I only realized today that we're going to be doing in this October session 2 mid-70s mutations of vampire mythology.
Love it.
There's a lot of parallel. I was going to bring it up actually in this podcast. Maybe we'll talk about it in that one. But there's so much parallel about. There are 2 films that, and Ganja predates Martin, of course, and they both reference vampire mythology and mutate it and make it their own and blur reality and the fiction, and they both get into irrational religiosity
and
in our modern world.
And they both also had weird direct-to-video re-edits as well, which we'll be getting into.
Yeah.
So another weird parallel. Blood couple.
Yeah.
And then we're going to close out 1 fucking Tober with the ultimate Tober Hoopy, which is 1989's Canadian Canucksploitation shot on Super 8 film, Things. literally in absolutely unintentional video art trash film from the late 80s, but I love it. I released it once on DVD. I have a lot of love for the film, and we're having special guest Joey Izzo return because it is a childhood favorite of his. I actually have a friend that has a Things tattoo. One of our listeners. I don't know if you know this, Tom.
Oh my friggin' God, no.
One of our regular listeners has a Things tattoo on his foot, so maybe we'll get a picture of that for everyone.
I was wondering where.
Yeah.
All right.
Send feet pics.
Snap. We need a shot of that.
Yes, feet pics.
Feet pics for the show.
Feet pics
and
or it didn't happen.
And the reason we call Toby Hoopy is because the wonderful Canadian, the wonderful Albertan director behind Things, Mr. Barry J. Gillis. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about him. He's also the star of the film. That's what he calls Toby Hooper. So we call it Toby Hoopy. So it is, what is it? Tober Hoopy. It's either one fucking Tober or Toby Hoopy.
October Hoopy.
Yeah.
I'm going to start calling it October Hoopy.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Because it's just so fucked up. Because hopefully people will get acclimated to the incredibly obscure reference we're making. I don't think I think only you know that, Evan. I think if you're getting, from my understanding this right, you were just talking to him at some film festival or something, and he's just saying like, and it was like, go ahead.
I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was I had a bunch of friends over at my house. Get a phone call from Barry J. Gillis, the director of Things, because we're gearing up to release the DVD, and he was about to explain to me the various special features that he has prepared for the DVD release. And he's like, "Yeah, we got this, the behind the scenes, and this and that." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I sat down with Toby Hoopy and we talked about the movie, or whatever." And it's an amazing special feature that we have to dig up for that episode. Because it's literally footage. It's literally footage of Toby Hoopy sitting down watching the trailer to Things, and his reaction to it is priceless. He just watches the trailer and he goes,
"That's right,
far out, far." Whatever, and it's just like it's the best. So we're gonna get into all that. We're gonna get into that now.
That's the rest of
October Hoopy. Yeah. So
see you
thank you guys. Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks again for one fucking year. We really appreciate you all so much.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Subscribe to the channel, like the video.
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Ring that bell for when the new episodes
drop.
Smash
that subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button.
I always wanted to say that.
Yeah. Smash that. We should probably do that every episode. But okay, and we can't leave you guys. Leave a comment. Thank you. Leave a comment too if you can. All right, guys. We can't leave you without that beautiful, wonderful moment of Zen. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your October, and we'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.